Hey, what's up, guys? I just want to take a few minutes and give you a quick update on some up and coming videos that I have planned. So, right over here, right there, I have an evaporator barrel out of an ice machine. I believe it's a Hvac, however you want to say it. I'm going to tear that apart. Now, from my videos, you probably know that I don't get to work on a whole heck of a lot of ice machines. So, sometimes I'll have guys give me pieces of ice machines for me to tear apart and have fun with. So I'm going to tear this one apart. I don't know what happened to it. I believe that the screw that's inside here has locked up, probably a bad bearing or something. But it'll be fun to tear it apart because I don't get to see these in the field, like I said. I already took part of the motor apart right down here. So I just have the stator on there, and the stator spins pretty freely. So I'm also guessing there's probably an issue with the gearbox. So that'll be kind of fun. Now, let's see what else we have here. Right over here, you'll notice is it's actually the compressor out of the little mini cooler that I tore apart and ran the compressor with water in it for a while. So I had it soaking in WD-40, water displacement 40, WD-40 for a little while. And I got this idea from Old Time Heating. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook my drill up to this shaft, and I am going to hook my meter up to the little wires that I left on the windings here. I'm going to run it and just see what kind of voltage it generates, just for the heck of it. I'm curious to see what it does. Now, all right, guys. Now, right here, what we have is what I refer to a evaporator / condenser deck or sled, and this was supposed to go into a master-built coffin case or a deli case of some sort. I wasn't the technician who had to deal with this particular issue. The technician who did said that the warranty manufacturer, Masterbuilt, sent this by mistake. It was supposed to be a different model, but they sent this by mistake and didn't want to pay to have it shipped back to them because it's just too expensive. So they told him to keep it and that they would just send out the correct one. Now, this particular technician decided to gift it to me because he's a super cool dude and knew that I would do something meaningful with it. So I have it now. I'm not real sure what I want to do with it yet. I have a couple ideas. I don't really want to destroy it. I don't want to run different refrigerant through it. I might, though. It is an R290 system, so I might, just for the heck of it, run it with R290 in it, get a baseline of how it runs, and then maybe switch it. Because I guarantee at some point in time, if it hasn't happened already, I guarantee somebody has, or will anyway, somebody will remove R290 and try to put in regular refrigerant. So that's an option. I might do that because I can always sort of clean the system up and go back to R290. But what I also might do is take it and take a mini cooler, cut part of it out, mount it on top because our evaporator section is right there. I'm not 100% sure of the airflow. I believe it probably goes down this way and comes up through this fan into the box. But we'll have to figure that out later. So if you guys have any ideas or opinions or suggestions, something you want me to do with it, something you'd like to see done with it, let me know. I'll entertain some ideas. So guys, that's what we got planned. That's what I got coming down the pipeline. As I always say, if you guys have any comments, opinions, ideas, let me know. I'm open to any ideas, suggestions. If you want to see me tear something apart in particular, let me know. I'm all about tearing stuff apart and seeing what's on the inside, all right? So stay tuned, guys. Lots of stuff coming. We'll see you on the next one, all right? All right, guys, here's our project for today. I got this Lennox unit here, 12.5 ton package unit. And the issue has been over the summertime, we have been out here multiple times gassing this unit up. I've had two guys here on separate occasions leak check this system, and we have yet to find a leak. So I am here today to do more of a in-depth leak check, I suppose. So first things first, I am just going to add in nitrogen on top of the already existing refrigerant charge, rather than reclaiming the charge on both circuits, adding nitrogen, and then adding a little bit of tracer gas. Like I said, I'm just going to add nitrogen right on top of the gas that's already in there. All right, I went a little bit overboard. I'm at 275 PSI, which should still be fine. I was shooting for 220, but I didn't set my regulator properly. Anyway, I'm gonna disconnect these hoses so I can leave the system isolated when I check circuit 1. Right now I got my recovery tank being pulled into a vacuum just to make the recovery process a little bit easier the first time around. So, let's get our hoses off here. Normally I have a quick release on this side, but as you can tell, I didn't have one on that one. Let's get to sniffing. Now we're gonna come back to that one. There may be some residual refrigerant left around that stem just from pulling the hoses off. And I'm getting a pretty high hit, about 7. Yeah, that may be our leak right there. Now, I have yet to see this in real life, but I think NorCal Dave had it on a video one time where a pressure switch, just like the one I'm checking right now, cracked internally and was actually leaking refrigerant through the wires, and he was able to check over here at the wire connections, and he actually got a hit on his leak detector. Now, I've never seen that in real life, but that would be amazing to see in real life. Just something to keep in mind when you guys are leak checking stuff, all right? That's a tip from your buddy NorCal Dave. Not getting anything around my... Over the years, I've found leaks all over these distribution tubes. Only because they're always touching each other, rubbing up on stuff they shouldn't be rubbing up on. Like right back there. Oh, no, there's a space back there. This line right here. Now, in my experience, when these microchannel coils leak, it's usually over here at the header, or what I call a header. I don't know if that's technically what it's called. And nothing over there. Check over here on this side. And again, there's no oil stains or anything on this microchannel coil, so I don't suspect this coil is leaking. I think what I'm going to do now is just spray some bubbles on these Schrader cores and see if we can verify an actual leak or if we're just sensing residual refrigerant in there. Yeah, I'm getting no bubbles coming out of there. No, not really. Well, actually. Now, it's probably hard to see because it's so bright out here, guys. But there doesn't appear to be any growing bubbles around this stem or on this stem. So I think whatever I was sensing initially was just a little bit of refrigerant left behind when I pulled the hoses off. I've seen too where this elbow will crack right at that stress point when it was bent. And usually when it cracks right there, it's just the tiniest little, like a hairline crack. But I got nothing right there. But I have about 250 pounds of pressure inside of circuit number 2. My sniffer's going. Got a small hit on that Schrader port. Probably get one on this one too once I get in there. Yeah. I'm gonna obviously verify that with bubbles, but we're probably just dealing with a little bit of residual refrigerant oil from when I disconnected my hoses. Now it might look like I'm just randomly sweeping this, but there is somewhat strategy to this madness. I'm just trying to go around the solder point of all these elbows. Usually that's where they leak from. I've had a few that have leaked actually at the elbow itself, but most of the time they'll leak around the solder joint, the braze joint. Now with these evaporators, I just kind of go in a Z pattern. I mean, it's more or less, I'm just randomly sweeping this because I have no other way to do it. All right, this is getting to be pretty anticlimactic. I haven't found a leak. None of these seem to be leaking. None of these Schrader cores that I just sniffed with my electronic leak detector and got a hit, none of these actually confirm a leak with bubbles. So far, I cannot verify a leak anywhere, which is the same issue the other guys were having over the summertime. Another thing I like to do when checking for leaks, especially with bubbles, is I'll sort of move the tubing just a little bit. I have had leaks in the past where it's just a tiny little hairline crack, hairline leak somewhere, and the way the copper sits, you might not detect it. You move the copper, move the tubing, all of a sudden you hear a psst, or you see a bunch of bubbles start shooting out of the joint or whatever is leaking. So I'm not saying go around and start bending all the tubing and everything, but just push on it a little bit. And again, you'll notice the bubbles are moving, but they're not reproducing, they're not getting bigger. So without further ado, now remember, this tank is under a vacuum, so it also helps when you open the tank up or you shut off on high pressure like you just seen. All right, guys. Here's where we're at. I got the nitrogen refrigerant combination recovered out of circuit number 1 and circuit number 2. Circuit number 1 has been under a vacuum for about 15 minutes now. We're at, see if I can get it to show up on camera, 340 microns. And again, my micron gauge is at the lowest point of my system because my low side is valved off right here. So I'm pulling in through my gauges, which I know are somewhat of a restriction, going through my high side into the system, and so I'm sensing on my low side. So let's get a decay test. All right now, if you can tell over there on the vacuum pump, I'm valved off right there. So my micron gauge is isolated. It's sensing just the sealed system right now. And it looks like we're holding strong at 340. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to slide my vacuum pump over to circuit number 1. I'm going to start pulling a vacuum on that system, and I'm just going to let this one sit here and see if we get any rise out of that 340 microns. Looks like we passed our decay test. Our micron level actually went down by 10 to 330, as you can see. Now, to what I understand, the reason behind that is because my micron gauge is, of course, at the lowest point in the system, and my vacuum pump was pulling at the highest point. So I believe once the vacuum pump was turned off and my system was isolated, the vacuum sort of equalized, and it was actually a little bit of a lower micron level than we were initially sensing. That's just how I understand it in my brain. So anyway, I'm going to pop this micron gauge off, put it over on circuit number 1, and let that pull a vacuum while I charge this side up. Not sure how well you can see that, but we're just finishing our charge here. I did have to turn the unit on and put it in test mode so I could meter in the rest of the refrigerant through the low side. So we're looking for 7 pounds, 4 ounces, and we're there. So let's shut that off. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. All right, guys, let's do our second decay test. Circuit number 2 is down to 300 microns. And again, I got the same setup. This side is valved off right here. So I'm sucking through the high side, and that makes my micron gauge at the lowest point of the system. Shut this valve off, turn our pump off. No initial rise. So let's let that sit there for a few minutes and see what happens. Here's what we're looking at, guys. Circuit number 1, 36 degree evaporator. Condensing temperature is about 87. It's about 65 degrees out today. Maybe a little bit cooler, but sun's starting to come out, so it's probably going to warm up a little bit. But anyway, our condensing temperature is pretty close to the 20 to 25 degree rule of thumb that I use for microchannels. Our evaporator temperature is a little low, but our return air is only 72 degrees. So there's not a huge load on that evaporator because it was pretty cool this morning. Try to get you a decent view of these gauges. Here we go. Circuit number 2 is about a 38 degree evaporator. Condensing temperature looks like it's about 90, maybe 88, 86, 88 degrees. So we're about the same as circuit number 1. Our return air is 72, like I said. Discharge air temperature is 70. Or excuse me, return air is 73 now. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if I can get a decent, clear picture of that. All right, you can kind of see it right there. Return air is 73, discharge air is 49. All right, guys, well, that'll do it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. I know there wasn't a whole lot of instant gratification from finding any sort of giant leaks in the system like I was hoping anyway. But I did get a little bit of a hit around 2 of those Schrader ports, which I changed out. So I'm going to chalk this up to leaky Schrader cores, I suppose. Even though I didn't or wasn't able to confirm that with bubbles. That is the only leak I found in the entire system. And both circuits did pass the decay test, and they were down around 300 microns and 330 microns on the other side. So if there was a leak after I changed out those Schrader cores, then I'm pretty sure I wouldn't pass the decay test. However, who knows? I could have the slightest little tiny fraction of a width of a hair leak somewhere in the system that I'm just not able to detect. Maybe a tiny little leak that only leaks out under higher pressure, something on the high side possibly. So if there is, I'm sure we'll get a call in the summertime and we'll have to revisit this situation. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the video. There was a few little nuggets of information some of you newer guys might be able to use. For now, guys, that'll do it. I'll see you on the next one, all right? Go ahead and hit that like button for me, will you? And subscribe while you're at it, all right? We'll see you on the next one. All right, guys. Here's our project for today. We have a Hvac ice machine that apparently was making a beeping noise. It's making ice now. It's just a little nugget machine. So I haven't heard any beeping noise or anything out of the ordinary yet. Sounds like our compressor just kicked on. If you'll see down there, we do have our water coil. It is a water cooled unit. Right back here, there's our auger. There's this fill tube, I believe is what that is. Now, I don't work on these every day, so this is definitely something I'm going to have to download the manual on just to make sure I'm understanding the sequence of operation. Because for the last 2-3 minutes, it's been running water through this tube nonstop. And I'm not sure if it's supposed to do that. Seems out of the ordinary, but I'll have to look at the manual just to understand the sequence of operation on this. I got the front panel off. There's our control section. There doesn't seem to be any flashing lights of any kind. Now, I made sure not to power the machine down yet because I didn't want to erase or reset any codes that might be flashing. Now, over here in our ice bin, you can tell we are making ice now. It's obviously not full, not anywhere near being full. This right here is our bin switch. So I'm assuming it was off for quite some time on some sort of code. So once I get the manual out, I'm going to see if this unit is capable of storing fault codes. If it is, we'll have to go through and see how we can go about retrieving that fault code and seeing what that fault code is, and then we will go from there. Alright guys, so I thumbed through the service manual. I didn't see any way to retrieve any stored fault codes. It didn't specifically say that this unit doesn't store fault codes, but it doesn't appear that it does. So what I can do now is just watch the machine and see if the problem that they were experiencing returns. I'm going to let it run for a little while, see how much of this ice we can get filled up in there, and see if our problem comes back. And if it doesn't, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this cover off, just inspect our auger and our bearing for any signs of damage. I've had 2 or 3 of these where the bearing goes bad on these and the auger just destroys the inside of the evaporator. It's a mess. But these are pretty neat little machines. I'm no expert on them by any means, but yeah, essentially all it's doing is there's a circular evaporator inside with a screw auger, and water is sprayed on that evaporator and it freezes, obviously. And then that screw auger just rotates, pushes the ice up through here, and then there's a little, probably can't see it from the condensation, but there's a, what's it called, an impeller sort of device that just sort of chops the ice off when it gets pushed up like that and then pushes it over into our ice bin. Hey, look what we just caught. How many beeps was that? So we got 5 beeps. Alright, so as you heard, we have 5 beeps coming out of this control. So let's see if we can get to our alarm section real quick. LED lights and audible alarm safeties. So if we look down towards the bottom there, we had 5 beeps, freeze timer, water valve off, 30 minutes since last water valve activation. So what I believe that means is that it's been 30 minutes since our water valve has last activated, but as we can tell here, our water valve is still dumping water into the machine even though it has been powered off, or even though it's been de-energized. Alright guys, I just powered the unit off and I'm still filling with water. So right here is our water inlet valve. I'm just going to verify that I don't have any power to it, which I don't, because it's off. So that's why. Apparently our water valve is stuck open. Well, we found our water shut off. Got it shut off. Just waiting for the rest of that water to drain out of the machine over here. As you can tell, we are no longer running water through our overflow tube. Which, after reading a little bit on this machine, this tube right here appears to be just an overflow tube that comes out of the fill tank. This is our actual fill tube that goes into our evaporator. This right here is our drain tube, and this valve back here, that's our drain valve. So the reason why we had water pouring out of here was just because our water valve never shut off. So let's get up there and take that water valve apart and see what we can figure out. Alright guys, here's our water valve, taken all apart. I know it's a bad angle, but we're not working in the best conditions here. So this is our solenoid, of course. This is our little plunger. Now that little plunger sits right on top of this, and there's a little spring right inside here that obviously pushes it back down, I believe. I'm going to pull that open and just verify that, because some of these water valves, anyway, the older ones that I'm used to, they had diaphragms inside and they closed based on water pressure, not on a spring. So let's just see. We do have a spring. You can see right inside there. Yeah, there is a spring in there, see? I wonder if maybe our spring is broken. There's our spring. It's just a thin little spring, huh? I'm going to stretch it out just a little bit. Kind of give it a little bit more pushing force, if you will. And again, guys, I'm not looking for a permanent solution here. This is just sort of an experiment to see if I can get them up and running for now. And kind of inspect our little diaphragm here, our little gasket. Doesn't look, there's not a whole lot of grub on it. I mean, there's a little bit of crap built up on it. Don't mind my dirty fingernails. Alright, there's our little diaphragm. Doesn't look dry rotted or cracked or split anywhere. So really, I mean, it should be closing without issue. And there's our, this side that you're seeing through goes down into our fill. The fill, what's it called? The fill, not the fill valve, the fill housing. Our screen is nice and clear. Alright, well, let's put it back together and see if that did any good at all. As you can see, we got our water valve back in place. It's hooked up again. So let's go turn the water on over here underneath the sink and see what happens. Alright guys, before I go ahead and turn this unit back on, I just wanted to take a second and familiarize myself with the sequence of operation chart here. We are starting from the number 1 position, startup. I did just drain all the water out of our fill assembly, our fill valve and everything, our fill tube. Everything's been drained. So once I start up, I will be starting fresh, basically. Just below our control assembly, there are some other controls, our off, drain, or ice positional control, and our dispensing mode. Just a few seconds ago, as I was looking at the service manual, I drained everything just using that drain switch, and all that does is open up our drain valve back there. It just energizes this drain valve, then all the water that we have in our fill assembly, that I call it, drains out. So as soon as I hit the start button, we will go through a proper sequence of operation. So let's do that. Alright, right now our water valve is energized. We are filling up. It says it should take no longer than 90 seconds to fill. And then our gear motor comes on. I don't hear the compressor yet, but I believe there is a sort of a purge. Our gear motor will come on just to clear any ice that's built up around it. And then in a few seconds here it'll start spraying water inside of our evaporator, and we will freeze and actually make ice. Real quick, while we're waiting for our compressor to come on, I'm sure some of you guys have noticed that our incoming power is just an extension cord, it looks like. And if it's like most extension cords that I'm used to, it's probably only rated at 15 amps. And if we look over here, our minimum circuit ampacity is 20 amps. Maximum fuse size, 20 amps. So, probably put a quote in or a recommendation at least to upgrade that wiring. Just get some 12 gauge in there. Alright guys, our compressor just kicked on. Took a little while, but what I found out is that it's a 5-minute purge cycle where our gear motor runs for 5 minutes, just trying to get rid of any ice that's built up on top of that auger. And you can bypass it by pushing this that little service button right there. You can start to see a little bit of ice forming and getting pushed up through the slots. Let's go over here. Alright guys, we're back to making ice. As you can probably hear, our water valve is no longer going non-stop. I am going to quote to replace that water valve though, because I don't trust it now. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to shut this off, I'm going to drain it, and then I'm going to pull that auger apart and show you a little glimpse of the inside. Alright, here's a quick tour of the place. Now that is kind of dirty. I am also going to quote or recommend that they have this unit PM'd and cleaned, which they will probably deny my quote because they have a team of maintenance guys to do it. So anyway, here is the top of our auger. Ice is created obviously inside the evaporator. It's pushed up through these little I don't know, finger guides maybe. I'm sure there's a better technical term for them. And then as this impeller spins around, it just snaps those off and pushes it straight onto our ice bin. It's a pretty simple concept. Alrighty guys, let me button this up here. We're just about finished up, alright? Alright guys, so it's been about 2 weeks since that last video clip you saw. I am here today to replace that water valve. Apparently it has been holding that temporary fix that I guess put in place where I just disassembled the valve, kind of cleaned up that diaphragm and then reassembled it. It has been holding, so it is full of ice currently. I got the water shut off. I'm going to shut the power off, move this control panel out of the way, and then we will swap that valve out. has one of these black clips on there that just holds this, I don't know what you call it actually, funnel device in place. Pops right off. See, real simple. There's our old valve, new valve, pops on, squeeze that together, put it over top of the water trough. Probably one of the easier water valves to change out on these machines, on these ice machines in general, I suppose. Alright guys, we're just wrapping up here. There's our new shiny water valve, fully installed and leak-free. Real quick, I don't know if it picked it up on video a little bit ago, but the best way to change that water valve out is just to remove this entire control assembly. Pop that screw out. There's a screw right back there. Pull that screw out. This one right back up there in the corner. Pull that screw out. This whole control assembly will just slide right down and give you plenty of room to get in there. So let's power it on. As you see, we're full of ice. I moved some of the ice out of the way so our bin switch wasn't tripped. Go ahead and close this up. It's going through its purge. As you can see, we are producing ice. Our water valve did open up temporarily to fill up that water reservoir tank. And as you can tell, we are good to go. So I'm gonna wrap up and get out of here, all right guys? Hope you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button for me, all right? Subscribe while you're at it too, all right? We'll see you on the next one. Hey, what's up YouTube? So it's 9:45 in the morning, just had my coffee, and then my phone rang. And I'm the on-call guy this weekend. So we are heading over to a no heat situation. That's an emergency at a pet store. Apparently all the pets are freezing, so let's get over there and see what they got going on, all right? Found it. RTU number 11. Let's see what we got going on. Inducer's blowing cold air. Pop this open. Our energy management board has a 2-stage call for heat. Code 56, airproofing switch, I'm guessing. Yep, airproof switch number 1 is open. Let's check it out. So I pulled the wire off my pressure switch, put this dirty, disgusting tube in my mouth, and I sucked until I had continuity through that switch. So I did verify that switch is good. So now I'm gonna suspect that port is probably plugged up. In the summertime, I get a lot of bees and wasps that make nests in there. Chances are that's what we got going on. I got my inducer off. I did have to pull some of the screws out of this top panel so I could lift it up a little bit to get to the 2 screws on the top of the inducer. No huge deal though. Let me see if I can zoom in here and show you what we got going on. Now I know it's hard to really see inside that port, but it is plugged up. You can kind of see a little bit of it right there if my camera will focus. So what we got to do is just get a piece of thermostat wire or a paper clip or something. We'll jam it in there, clear that port out, and then we'll cycle power and see if it starts up, all right? Jammed a piece of wire in there, clean that port out just to be sure. Let's see if we can see some light through there. There you have it. You can see right down in that port now. Real quick before we fire it up, let's check this heat exchanger. There's a spot that's getting kind of bad, but there's no actual openings on any of these seams, so we should be good. Probably get another season out of this heat exchanger. Just going for heat. And we have ignition. Awesome. 0 fault codes. I think we fixed her, guys. 106 degrees and rising. All right, guys, it's time to get out of here. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys soon, all right? Hey guys, let me give you a quick rundown of what we're doing today. So I am here on site at a customer's location, and I am supposed to replace a compressor in a 3 or 4 door zero zone freezer. I'm not sure which yet. I just got here. I wasn't the technician to originally diagnose this system or troubleshoot it in any way. So in this particular situation, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go in there with a few hand tools and basically re-diagnose the system. And that's not because I question anyone else's ability. It's only because I want to be on the same page as the technician who diagnosed it. So I'm basically just double checking stuff, just covering all my bases. So let's face it, we all make mistakes. So I just don't want to be the one at the end of that mistake where I have to explain to a customer that we have a new issue or we're basically repairing the wrong issue. So that's what we're going to do first. And then, depending on how that goes, we'll probably be replacing the compressor. So I'll bring you guys along for the ride. All right? We'll see you inside. All right, guys. So real quick, I wasn't able to confirm diagnosis because the previous technician has removed the existing start capacitor and run capacitor, and with that relay being burned, I don't want to run the risk of hooking up a new run capacitor and start capacitor and possibly exploding them or having them fail in any way. So I'm going to proceed with the repair as I was told to do so. All loaded up for trip number 1. Tech tip of the day, guys. To save your back, use your shopping cart. As long as they'll allow you to use it. Alright guys, got the recovery process going. Don't have much room up here, so I'm sort of working off the side of a ladder. After just a few more minutes, we'll have everything recovered. And then what we'll do is we'll unsweat our hot gas discharge line and unscrew the suction line from the rotor-lock, swap out compressors, and hopefully reinstall it just as smoothly. I think our only issue might be trying to figure out where this burned wire went, where it is, but that shouldn't be too terrible. Real quick guys, something I wanted to point out that seemed kind of odd to me was this unit doesn't have a liquid line solenoid. Which the majority of these zero zones that I work on do have liquid line solenoids. But if you'll trace our liquid line back there, and it's not under here, this is just a cover for our wiring penetration. So it goes back through there. Let's climb up top. Follow our line set through there, goes behind there, our sight glass, back to our receiver, but no liquid line solenoid, which seems sort of odd to me, I guess. I got my charge recovered, got my rotor-lock connection loose, or off rather. Now, the new compressor doesn't come with a new rotor-lock, so I'm going to try to unsweat this one. So what I'm going to do first is remove the bolts out of the bottom of this compressor, unsweat my discharge line, and then kind of wiggle the compressor back or turn it sideways a little bit so I can unsweat this and pull it straight out. Because I don't want to move this suction line around too much and risk cracking it. So that's my plan, guys. So the issue I'm having is this rotolock connection isn't coming off. Looking at that weld, I'm not sure if it's even supposed to come off. Looks like it was just welded on there from the factory. So chances are this stub right here is probably just a steel stub that's welded to this brass fitting. And like I said, the new compressor doesn't come with a rotolock kit, so I might have to do some repiping and just straight pipe it. Cut out that rotolock connection and straight pipe everything, it looks like. So that will be fun. Since I don't have a rotolock connection for that new compressor, I'm just going to straight pipe it like I said. So I got this piece all bent up. It's a little long, obviously. I'm going to have to cut it down a little bit. But what I'm going to do, braze it in there. I'm going to braze this service port on here. I'm going to put a T on here so I can connect my low side pressure switch as well as have a port to obviously service it. So that's the plan. Alright guys, real quick, this is where we're at. I wasn't able to bend, well actually I was able to bend a piece of copper, but the piece of copper I had wouldn't fit into this compressor fitting. I'm not exactly sure what size this compressor fitting is, but I know it's an odd size. I just happen to have an elbow that is from an old compressor kit that fit perfectly inside there. So I got that in there, bent this piece. Here's my service port, my low pressure switch. So not too bad for a last minute idea. So let's get her brazed in place and start pulling a vacuum on this thing. As you can tell, we got our suction line brazed in, hot gas discharge line brazed in, discharge sensor has been reattached. We're sitting at 141 psi of nitrogen. I've been sitting at that pressure for about 20 minutes, so we should be good. I'm going to blow the nitrogen and then start pulling a vacuum on this thing. But so far we are making pretty good progress. Alright guys, as you can tell there's not much room up there to work, so that's why I didn't get a whole lot of film. But let's see what our micro gauge says. Well, 2000 isn't bad. It's been running for about 20 minutes. Kind of hoping for a little bit less than that. So, alright guys, let's let this run for a little bit longer and see what happens. Alright, down to 470 microns. So, it's been about 10-15 minutes now. I was at 510. I shut my vacuum pump off, let it equalize or settle down. I'm at 470 now, so I think it's time to charge this thing up. Now look at our brand new shiny compressor. Looking for about a 0 to negative 10 degree evaporator. Negative 10 would be great. Alright, we're at 1 degree. We got our doghouse back on there. Power is on. Airflow is good. We are almost all set. Now we're all set. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, will you? Alright guys, so what we got going on. 0 zone 3-door freezer, not freezing. It's at 1 degree now. The complaint is that it will freeze some days, and some days it'll get up around 50 or 60. First thing I do is check my airflow. Now the airflow seems to be fine right now. If you'll notice this ice right here, I have a couple of videos where I highlight this particular problem. There's a drain further down there. Check all those other fans. There's a drain behind that middle fan, and that drain likes to freeze over because they don't have a factory installed drain line heater. So that drain will freeze over. The condensate will build up on the bottom of here. It will freeze, and then eventually it'll stop the fans. So what probably happened is our ice built up, stopped our fans. The box warmed up, everything melted, and then it came back down to temperature. That's why it's at 1 degree today. Looks like we have an inconsistent frost pattern as well. All right, so what you're looking at is the condensing unit of the freezer we're working on. Just gonna tip this up real quick. It's a little dirty. Sight glass is clear. Condensing fan motors doing a pretty good job. Everything's dusty though. I'd really like to take some nitrogen and just blow this thing completely out. Rotolock, less rusty. Not a big fan of those Rotolock connections. Let's see. Oh. Well, that balloon shouldn't be there. Yeah, that's a common issue at this location. This right here, that is our low side suction pressure. Goes right into that transducer right there. So, look right down there. This is our condensate pump. Pumps the water through this little hose up to a secondary pan on top of the cooler, on top of the freezer. It's got a heater in there. So all I'm going to do right now is I'm going to dump some water in here just to make sure that that pump actually works. See right here, this is the drain line that goes, I don't know, about another 10 inches back, and then there's an elbow that goes up into the cabinet. That's the part that freezes over. Probably hard to see in there, but it does appear that that pump is pumping water up to the secondary drain pan, secondary condensate pan. You see that round silver thing in the back? That's our float, and there's our heating element. So once it fills up, that heating element obviously is activated and heats up the water until it evaporates. But it looks like this pump is struggling to move that water, so. And it's a common issue. They just sit in here and dry rot. The seals inside of them dry rot. And they start pumping water out the sides and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that pump as well. All right, guys, I'm sure you're wondering what I'm doing. I'm soaking this towel in water. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you why. There is the black towel that I soaked in water. I have it draped over the back of this condensing coil because what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow compressed nitrogen through this condensing coil to get the dust out. And that towel is going to help me contain this dusty mess just a little bit. First, I'm going to turn the unit back on so the condensing fan comes on and sort of helps me guide my dust through the doghouse here, the condensing cover, if you will. It doesn't contain all the mess, but it helps. Might want to hold your breath for this one. All right, condensing coil is clean. We will be submitting a quote to install a drain line heater and installing a new pump for that condensate pump down at the bottom of the unit. And then we will be able to verify proper operation after that. All right. So I'll be talking to you guys when we return. All right, guys. It's been about a week since that last clip you watched. We are back on site with a new heater and a new condensate drain pan we can install in this unit. So first thing I'm going to do is remove all the shelving right down here so I can flip this evaporator cover forward and we can get access to our drain. Real quick, guys, just something to keep in mind if you ever have to do this. A lot of times these freezers are set next to another freezer and they'll just have a thin piece of plastic separating them. So even though I shut this freezer off, this other freezer got cold enough to sort of keep some of this ice. Some of this ice down here that I wanted to melt didn't fully melt because all we have is this little plastic partition. So before I can do anything, I got to clear out all this ice. So got my little pump sprayer full of hot water. So let's get started. Tech tip of the day. Whenever you find yourself having to thaw one of these, in my situation, I left it off so it would thaw naturally. However, that right side next to our other freezer over there didn't completely thaw. So I got a bunch of water on the floor now because I wasn't careful enough and didn't watch what was happening. So what you can do in this situation, because this drain pan, this condensate pump, has its own separate cord. So what I should have done when I got here is open up this bottom panel, swapped out this pan real quick because I'm changing it anyway. I can take this, plug it into my extension cord over there, and then this way this pump will continue to pump water up top to my secondary heated drain pan. Now of course the heater won't come on because the unit is completely off, but it would have prevented all this water from spilling out all over the floor. So, at the very least, make sure you got your wet floor signs out. Alright, so let's get back to melting all that ice out of there. Just gotta go slow and steady because you don't really want to start jabbing that block of ice with a screwdriver because it's sort of all over our evaporator inlet and our TXV a little bit there, so I'm not just going to go stabbing it with a screwdriver. What I am going to do though is jam a rag in that drain so a majority of the water will build up in the bottom of this, and it might help
melt the ice a little bit. But at the very least, it's going to keep a majority of the water down in the base of this, and I can just suck it out with my shop vac instead of mopping it up off the floor. Alright, well, let me get back to this, guys. I'll bring it back when something exciting happens. Alright, well, let's get this heater installed. Let's see, should be 120 volt steel braided heater. I know it's a zero zone, but zero zone doesn't actually make a drain line heater, so I just buy a generic drain line heater that we use on all of our True coolers. Works exactly the same as every other steel braided drain line heater you've ever seen. Alright. Now, this blue line here, this blue line has constant power whenever the unit is on. Well, I take that back. It has constant power whenever the control is calling for fans, which is just about all the time, except in defrost. I want this drain line heater on all the time, so I am going to wire it directly into this power line. Now, if you want to go through the effort, you can run this drain line heater over to the control, and you can wire it directly to the control or to a junction block. But this is much easier. Now, I plan on using wire nuts because these heaters don't last forever. And I just want a somewhat easy way to replace it when it fails again. Because I could use butt connectors with heat shrink. But then I would come back, I'd have to cut all my wires again. I don't want to do that. right, so our heater is wired in, what do you call it, series? Alright guys, so we got our heater wired in series. Anytime you do this, make sure you secure the wiring, because obviously our fan blade right here, it'll catch that and it'll chop it up. So everything's nice and tight, nice and secure. We can flop that back, make sure that it's not, make sure the wiring's not pushing into our fan blades. Alright, now all we got to do is put our air baffles back over this evaporator and turn it back on. Alright guys, we're down to 0 degrees. Took about 45 minutes to get there, but everything looks good. Airflow's returned. So with that being said, I'm going to get out of here, guys.
Hey guys, real quick, I just wanted to take a few minutes and recap that video. I really wanted to highlight the issue I ran into when I was trying to thaw out the rest of that ice that was in there. Now, some of those coolers in a few different locations will have floor drains, and instead of being piped into a condensate drain pan like you see in that setup that I had, they'll just have just a regular PVC drain going right into a floor drain, which obviously is ideal, and is, you know, it'd be a lot easier to thaw those coolers out if they had that sort of setup. However, obviously this customer does not have that sort of setup, probably because the initial installation of a floor drain was too much, so they just went with the optional condensate drain pans and the heater and that entire thing. So anyway, when you have a setup like that, you can do one of two things that I found helpful. Is after the fact anyway, in the video you'll notice that I did block that drain off with a rag, and then I started melting all that ice. You can do that and that'll work pretty well. Block that drain off, melt as much ice as you can, take your shop vac, suck it out every once in a while. That works pretty well. I mean, the other thing you can do is you could, like I talked about in the video, you could just run an extension cord to that drain pan assembly and that pump. And that pump will run by itself at that point. But the problem you have to watch out for is if you do it that way, that water is going to get pumped up to that secondary drain pan up on top, the pan with the heater in it. And you could inevitably end up overflowing that drain pan. And you don't want that, because
then you just got water all over the top of the unit, running down the sides, down the back, down the front. So you don't want that. So I usually, when I remember, I usually opt out and go with the rag down the drain and then suck it out with the shop vac. Other than that, guys, I just want to say thanks for watching out there. I really do appreciate all the comments you guys have been giving me, all the feedback. I mean, I can't even tell you how much stuff I've learned just from the comments alone. Because I tell you, there are a lot of smart people watching these videos, and there's a lot of smart people giving me feedback, and I really do appreciate it. So keep it coming, guys. If ever you notice anything that maybe I can improve on, something I might have missed, something you've done before, and maybe got some tips on how to do it better, feel free, let me know. Shoot me an email. You know, leave a comment if you want. Whatever you feel like doing, I appreciate it, all right? So go ahead and like and subscribe for me, all right, guys? We'll see you on the next one. All right, guys. Today is Monday, October 21st, and we are on location in Toledo, Ohio, on top of a mall. And that guy right there, that is our project for today. Carrier Weathermaster series, and apparently it's not heating properly. That RTU goes to a small retail location inside the mall, and they just said that it's been kind of chilly lately as our temperatures have been dropping. Now, the first thing that struck me as odd is there's no gas line going to this unit. So my assumption is that it is electric heat, maybe a heat pump. I haven't opened it up yet or really done any research into it yet, but there's our gas line. So unless for some odd reason they have a gas line going through the unit, but at this mall, that's not usually the case. So it's probably, like I said, heat pump or electric heat strips. So let's pop some panels open, bypass the thermostat, and see what we can find out, all right? All right, guys, I got the panels pulled off. It is a electric heat system. It is not a heat pump unit, which is kind of strange because they only have one bank of heaters on this unit. I would have thought, since it's not a heat pump with supplemental electric heat, that they would have to have two banks of heaters on here, but I guess not. So anyway, as you can tell, it's pretty dirty. There's a lot of growth. I'm not going to say what kind of growth, but you can see what kind of growth it is. A lot of growth inside there, all over the wiring. And if we can get right down inside this blower wheel too, this blower wheel is all the grooves inside here. They're not terrible, but it's, I don't know, it's just dirty. It's dusty. There's not a whole lot of buildup where I think it's affecting airflow, but I am going to recommend that we pull that blower out and clean it and wipe down all this wiring. Belt looks good. Clean those wires down there, the high limits, clean all that stuff up. As you can tell right over there, there's a condenser under there. Now that inner part is just insanely dirty. Come around the side here though, that's been pretty well cleaned, pretty well maintained rather. But whoever's been cleaning this and taking care of this just cleaned the parts they can see and didn't bother opening this panel up and getting to this hidden condensing section, which is a pretty common issue. Now these electric heat RTUs, I don't see them a whole lot in my market because it gets so cold here in upper Ohio and southern Michigan that the electric heat just doesn't cut it. So it's kind of rare for me. So it's kind of neat. Gonna learn a little bit today. Real quick before I bypass this thermostat, I want to do a quick resistance check on these heater strips just to make sure they're not open. So if you look down here on this little sticker that I put on this cover, our heater amps are 11.5 to 13.8, so we'll round it off and say 13, right? And if you look at our volts, 400 to 460, this unit is a 460 volt unit. So using our Ohm's law, if we take our volts and we divide it by 13, so 460 divided by 13, we get about 35 amps, or 35 ohms of resistance rather. So if I go from here, which if you look at this blue wire is basically the end of our heat strip because they're daisy chained together, and then this top one is the beginning. We have 37.6 ohms of resistance. So According to Ohm's law, that is correct. And obviously, since we went from here, which again, this is the beginning, goes through a heat strip, comes out here, daisy chains off this high limit, and it comes out here. This is our end wire, basically. So, it's not open, so all of our heat strips are intact, all our high limits are closed, so we can safely proceed with this experiment. I'm just about ready to bypass this thermostat, power the unit on, and see if our heat strips come on. But real quick, I wanted to show you this. So right here is our W1, and this W1 24 volt signal will go up into our orange wire, which go into our time delay relay. However, through number 2 and number 1, it's normally closed. So our 24 volts will go through here into our black and then into our indoor fan contactor, or indoor blower contactor. So W1 also has an orange wire that comes down here to an optional, apparently it's optional because this unit doesn't have this first bank of heaters. So it would normally go into that and then turn on our first bank of heaters with a W1 call. Since we don't have that, this unit depends on a W2 call to go through violet wire here into our HC2, our heat contactor number 2. Seems kind of like a weird setup, but if we pan back over here, you'll see this is our only bank of heaters. Over here, there's a place for another bank of heaters, but it's not on there. I'm not real sure why. Maybe whoever did the heat load calculation said it didn't need it. I have no way of knowing that. But you'll see right here, this is our violet wire. So this is our secondary bank of heaters. So to bypass this thermostat, I need to have 24 volts going to W1 for my indoor blower, as well as 24 volts to W2 to actually kick on the heat strips. So that's what we got going on. Also, since it's a little warm inside the store, I took off my Y1 and Y2 so I'm not calling for heat and cool at the same time. So let's fire it up, see what happens. A little bit of a squeal right there. We have 14 amps. 14 amps. Yeah, 14 amps all over this. Alright, so as you can tell, our heat strips are working fine. I was getting 14.6 amps, I believe, off of them. Everything else looks good on this unit. Belt's just recently been replaced, it looks like. Besides it being dirty on the inside here, the blower wheel being dirty, I don't see any other major issues with it. Of course, that condensing coil being so dirty is obviously a major issue. But as far as their heat not being enough during the wintertime or over the last couple of days, my only recommendation to them is going to be to add another bank of heat strips to that. So we'll see what they want to do. I'm also going to include in that quote time to pull that blower, clean it up real good, wipe down all this wiring, get as much of this growth out of here as I can. I'm also going to quote to clean this condensing coil, obviously. Now, some of you guys out there might be wondering why I don't just clean it right now, or why I don't just do any of this right now, because with this particular commercial account, I'm not allowed to do anything without a quote. I need to take photographs and document everything and then include reasons why I recommend what I recommend. It's sort of complicated, but it is what it is. So I'm going to submit a quote to clean everything up, install a new bank of heat strips for them, and see how it runs over the wintertime. It should be much better, though, if we can get a second set of heat strips in there. So that's all for today, guys. I'll get this quote submitted, and if they say yes, I will bring you back along for the next ride, all right? All right, guys, so it's been about almost 3 weeks since that last clip you watched, between getting the approval to simply clean the blower compartment and a little bit of bad weather. It took a little while to get out here. So anyway, I'm going to be pulling out this blower assembly and just cleaning it. It's not too terribly dirty, but dirty enough to where I can justify pulling it out and cleaning it. And then I'm just going to wipe down some of these wires, get some of that growth off of there. And then we're going to put it all back together, fire it up in heat mode, and verify that the heat strips down there work, and then we'll be out of here. Here's your tech tip of the day. Now, I learned this the hard way from doing it wrong so many years, but these little zip tie holders that have a little, I don't know what you want to call them, a little sort of push-in connector that holds them in place. I used to just take these and cut them right off, and then I'd have to find some other way to zip tie these wires to whatever they were zip tied to. So what I've learned is that you can just cut it, and then you can, if this will work now, you can pull out the old zip tie. So what you're left with is just that little sort of what I call a zip connector in there anyway. So that zip connector is still in there, so I can just throw a brand new zip tie right through there and basically reuse it. So I don't have to try to find some other way to connect the zip tie around or drill new holes or do whatever I got to do to connect these wires back to this blower assembly. All right, tip of the day, guys. As you can tell, I got my blower assembly out of there. With this particular unit, what I like to do is I just like to remove this motor mount, just kind of flip it up like that. There's a little bit of tension on the wires, but most of this is just resting on the side panel over there. Just lots of grime all over this place. We're gonna wipe all this down real quick. I don't know how well it's picking it up on camera, but let's see if we can get in there. There we go. Yeah, it's not the worst I've ever seen, but obviously it's not the best either. That's why we're cleaning it. So even though it's like 35 degrees outside here, we're still going to clean it, make sure it's ready for wintertime. All right, so I took my condensing brush right there and sort of broke up as much of this gunk that's all over these blades as best as I could. So let's hit it with some water and see how much of this crap we can get off here. All right, looks like the water coming out of there is clean now. Some stuff up here, I'll just have to wipe that off. Kind of get it as close to brand new looking as I can. All right, let's stuff her back in the machine and turn it on. Got our blower assembly back in there. Just kind of wiping things down here best I can with one hand for now. But I'm not really too overly OCD in my opinion, but I do like to wipe these things down, just make it look a little bit better than it did when I got here. See, like all this crud on there. It only takes a second. Just wipe it off. Get all that crap off there. Why not? Why not make the world a better place, right? One clean wire at a time. All right, guys. I'm going to get two hands on this so I can get done a little bit faster. Looks like we got to brush off that motor, too. It's starting to get clogged up. So getting back to that tech tip I gave you earlier. So if you remember, this is that little I don't know, push-in style zip tie that we cut off, and I just pulled the remaining part of the zip tie out of it. So what I was talking about, reusing these, here's my new zip tie. Just jam it through there like so. And you're back in business. See? So you don't need to cut those right off. Just cut the one piece of zip tie off, pull it through, and you can reuse it. We are all set here. I even cleaned up the inner side of this condensing coil while I was at it. I got my jumpers on there. We're pulling 14.3 amps on these heaters, so we are good to go. I'm gonna button this thing up and get off the roof here, guys. Not groundbreaking material, I know, but at least it's just something to show the newer guys who maybe haven't seen a rooftop package unit that has heat strips in it. I know I've only seen 3 in my market. In Michigan, they're kind of rare because it gets so cold out in the wintertime, heat strips aren't really gonna do the trick. Even a heat pump really won't do the trick. So it's kind of a rare thing to see. So that's why I figured I'd film a little bit of it and show you guys. So anyway, hope you enjoy, guys. We'll see you on the next one, all right?
Hey, what's up, YouTube? So here's what we got going on today in this episode of Garage Science with the Curious HVAC guy. This right here is the evaporator barrel out of an isomatic ice machine. And I don't know exactly whatever happened to it, but I do know this rotor that's left on the gearbox here spins rather freely. So I'm guessing there's an issue inside the gearbox, possibly with the spindle that's attached to the bottom of this rotor. Now, the other thing that I've found just a handful of times is the bearing will go bad on this, and the auger or the screw inside this evaporator barrel will jam up. So what we're going to do is we are going to disassemble this gearbox, see what's going on inside there. Then we're going to disassemble this evaporator barrel and see what's going on inside there. Then what I want to do, I'm not sure how well this will work out, but what I want to do is I want to take and cut a chunk right out of this evaporator barrel, only so I can see how the refrigerant is routed through this evaporator barrel. I imagine it'll look something like a honeycomb, but I'm not 100% sure. But we will be once we slice it in half, right? So stick around, guys. Let's do some funky camera tricks with some music, all right? All right, so what we're going to do first is disassemble this evaporator barrel. All right, we got our screw / auger loosened up. I don't know how well this is coming across on camera, but if you look real close, you can see where it's been sort of digging into the inside of the evaporator. There's a peek at the inside there, guys. So let's stand it up and pull that gearbox apart. Yeah, right down here. These are the bolts that I'm going to pop out to attempt
to remove this evaporator barrel off the gearbox. Let's lay this guy down so I get some leverage on there. There we go. And that is our evaporator barrel. Look right down in there, it looks like there's a snap ring. I'm going to take that out and see what happens. Looks to be just a seal of some sort that was down inside there. Alright, there's our drip pan. That's garbage. You know, taking it apart like this, it kind of looks, if I had to guess, that they had a seal go bad. And maybe the condensation was getting down inside this gearbox. All right, one more bolt to go. There's our gearbox assembly. Of course, our evaporator barrel. Alright, so I got my rotor put back in the gearbox. Of course, the gearbox is upside down, exposing all my gears. Neato. So right here is our evaporator barrel. It's actually much simpler than I expected it to be. Looks like it's just, get this insulation off here. Yeah, it looks like it's just copper tubing wrapped around a stainless steel barrel, and then it's dipped in, I don't know, stainless, nickel, something. But let's cut it in half anyway.
Well, there's part of the evaporator barrel. Not sure how well you can see this on camera, but these tubes looked like they were all just rounded tubes, and one side was flattened out, and they were just wrapped around this barrel. I was thinking that they just had like a honeycomb design in the wall of this barrel, but that's not the case at all. Yeah, honestly, it's a pretty simple design. I know you guys are probably thinking, I could have just Googled it to see what this looks like, but can't really use my angle grinder to Google stuff, can I? Anyway, guys, that does it for tonight, all right? I hope you enjoyed this little episode of Garage Science, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, it's just where I come out in my garage and I cut apart, right? So, until next time, guys, stay curious. I'll see you soon. Oh yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe too. It's a little button down below. We'll see you. Alright guys, here's our problem today. We have this hanging utility heater that's squealing when it starts, and it doesn't want to heat very well either. Looks like an old Resner unit. I'm guessing 15, 20 years old, roughly. So, the other thing too is, I'm not sure if this is an actual working thermostat. This thermostat looks like it's about ready to fall apart. So, first things first though, I think I'm just going to jump this unit out and see what the squealing noise is. If I had to guess, it would be that belt right there. So, let's jump out that thermostat, start it up, and see what we're dealing with. Alright, traced out some wires. This is definitely the thermostat. Let's crank it up to 70. Heard the gas valve click. Sounds like our unit ignited. So I can hear it sparking. That belt is in horrendous condition. I can hear a flame, so it's definitely lit. We just gotta wait for the blower to kick on. I believe there's probably a thermostat inside that's gonna let us know when the heat exchanger or the inside compartment is up to temperature, so we're not blowing cold air throughout this place. Oh look, we do have a service switch. Fantastic. Yeah, that belt's not moving. All right. Alright, so for all you new guys out there, when your belt starts to look like old mud in a desert, you should probably replace it. So, I'm going to pull this off here, throw a new belt on there, and then see what we're dealing with. Alright guys, as Chris Stevens always says, big picture diagnosis. So, I'm going to scope this heat exchanger real quick before I go any further. If I can get a decent picture of it. I've learned this requires a very steady hand. So,
Now this first one here that we're looking at, I was able to get a flashlight and a mirror on. Didn't see anything crazy. As you can see, there's a little bit of rust buildup on the end fins. But I didn't see any actual cracks or weak spots. It's not the best resolution I've ever had, but don't like the look of that. Alright guys, here's where we stand. I was just noticing this is a 1983 unit, so we're about 36 years old. Now I found a belt that sort of fits. I'm not going to leave it on here permanently. I might just turn it on once I tighten it up. I'll probably turn it on and just check for CO emissions coming out the supply vent, because I couldn't get good enough eyes on the heat exchanger. Just say yay or nay. It is rusted pretty bad though, so I'm leaning more towards nay. But if you listen, this other thing we got going on here, and the motor's got to be replaced too. It's knocking, squeaking. See how fast it stops? Yeah, so that motor's got to be replaced. This blower's not as bad, but it definitely comes to a slower stop than it should, in my opinion. So, I'm not sure. I don't think I'm even gonna try to get a belt on this thing. I might just call it dead on arrival. It's really just not worth the risk of killing somebody by CO2 poisoning and giving my company a bad name. So, being a 36-year-old unit, I think it's time to call it. But I'm gonna see if I can inspect it a little bit more. I'd like to actually just pull this entire blower assembly off so I can get eyes on that heat exchanger, but the problem is I only got about 45 more minutes until this place closes, and it's gonna take me at least 20-30 minutes to remove all this wiring, unbolt the motor, pull that down, pull the blower assembly off, and then probably come to the same conclusion that I'm leaning towards right now, that it should just be replaced rather than repaired. So let me poke around here a little bit more, guys. I'll let you know what I decide here in just a little bit. Alright guys, let's recap this. So we had a hanging utility heater that was 36 years old, roughly, depending on the actual month it was manufactured. But anyway, I decided that it's no longer feasible, cost-effective, or safe to do any sort of repairs to this unit. And I based that on a couple different things. For one, obviously it needed a new belt. Obviously it needed a new drive motor because the motor bearing was squealing. Pulley came to a sudden stop, all that fun stuff. The blower bearing was getting kind of bad. It didn't come to a sudden stop when it spun by hand, but there was definitely some stiffness in that bearing that I didn't like. So that would have had been replaced. The heat exchanger was badly rusted. I didn't see any actual cracks on the heat exchanger, but I didn't get a lot of, I couldn't view it very well with my meter, or with my mirror rather, excuse me. And my borescope that I had, as you've seen in the little clip that I showed you there, the quality on it isn't that great. It wasn't good enough for me to pick up like little hairline fractures or cracks or anything like that. Now, I could have got a better bird's eye view of that heat exchanger if I would have removed the motor and the blower assembly, but like I said, this place is closed now, but I had maybe 45 minutes to do that. And not that it's impossible to do with one guy on a ladder, but I would rather have another guy there to help me, one on each side, pulling down the blower motor and then the blower assembly, and then I can get eyes on the heat exchanger. And at that point, I mean, you're already spending a lot of money in labor. There's really no point putting that much money, that much labor and time and energy into a 36-year-old hanging utility heater that can be replaced for a couple $100. I don't know, maybe it's $600-700 unit, who knows. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell them it needs to be replaced. It's not safe, not cost effective or feasible to do any sort of repairs to it based on its age. So that's where we're at, guys. So thanks for coming along. I appreciate all you guys watching out there. Leave me some comments. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for me, all right? We'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys. Hey guys, so we are on site in Taylor, Michigan here at a retail location, and what we have going on is back in June this building was remodeled essentially for this retail location, and 4 new carrier units were installed. Now during the remodel or some part of that process, the gas was shut off, so when the temperature started dropping they realized that they had no heat. So we came out here and found that the gas was shut off, and then we had to have the gas company come back on, turn the gas on, right? So I am here today to basically bleed off the lines, start up each one of the units, and burn off the heat exchangers, because those heat exchangers from the factory, they have just a film of oil or some sort of packing oil that's on there or something that protects it from rust in case they're sitting in storage for a long period of time. So that's what I was doing today. Now, that one way back there, up on the little ledge, I got that one done, I got that one done, and I got this one done. However, this one I noticed when I went to burn off the heat exchanger, it didn't have any power. So I went downstairs and I found it had a tripped breaker. No big deal. So I reset it, came back up here, turned the disconnect back on, and as I was just going through my checks, I happened to push in the contactor for what I believe is our first stage compressor, that one right there. And as soon as I did that, it tripped. So I need to investigate why that tripped. Now the first thing I'm going to do, since I'm 90% sure this compressor is our issue, like I said, because I pushed in the contactor with my screwdriver and it immediately tripped, and also because of this burn mark on there too. And I have power restored back at the breaker downstairs. My disconnect is off. So I'm going to very carefully remove this Molex plug. You want to be careful when you do something like this, because even though this is a newer unit, one of these pins could be compromised, and when I pull this off, it could blow the entire charge. So we want to be careful. I hope that doesn't happen, but if it does, it'll be on camera. There we go. All right, so now we are going to check that to ground. Chances are it's shorted out, but let's just see. All right, I got one lead jammed into my ground connector, and my other lead, we are going to test our terminals. Yeah, we do have some resistance there. Some resistance there. I got a direct short right there. And we have a lot of resistance to ground, so we are definitely shorted out on this compressor. Now, I believe I know why, and I'll show you here in just a second. Let's turn this back on. All right, my blower's on. Let's go over here to the blower real quick. There's no air coming out of this. I feel some air moving, but with this blower on and my heat exchanger panel removed, it should just be blasting me with air right now, and it's not. So, the other thing is, now listen real close. That compressor sounds like garbage. So our blower wheel's not spinning in the right direction, and our compressor sounds like garbage because they have the phase rotation mixed up. And what I'm assuming is that compressor, being the first stage compressor, probably ran for the last, I don't know, 2-3 months before we started hitting the colder seasons, because this remodel happened about late June, early July. And yeah, so it's probably been running with improper phase rotation for the last 2-3 months until it finally destroyed itself. So now what we got to do is correct that phase rotation. Turn that back off. I'm going to open up that disconnect, and then we will swap to the lines and then verify that we have proper phase rotation after that. So here's our disconnect, and to reverse rotation on any of these 3-phase units, which, by the way, let's go double check to make sure it is actually 3-phase, which I know it is. Right there, 208, 230, 3-phase. So all you need to do is swap any of the 2 lines. Now, I'm not going to try to swap these because it's in a tight spot and it looks kind of hard to get to. Instead, I'm going to swap these 2 right here. Make it a little bit easier on me. So let me set the camera down and set that up real quick. As you can tell, I got those 2 lines switched around, so my phase should be in the proper rotation now. And what I also did is I disconnected the voltage that powers up this contactor that goes to the compressor that's shorted out. I also removed this and just kind of taped it up out of the way for now. I'm not sure if they'll give us this job or if they'll have the company that installed these units, because we didn't set these or commission these units. This was done by a different contractor, maybe a general contractor, I don't know, but they didn't properly commission these. So let's power this on and see if we have proper rotation. It's going to take it a minute before it actually kicks into blower mode here, so be patient. Oh, it's a lot faster than I thought. So now we come over here, and you can probably hear you can just hear the difference now. We obviously have wind or air blowing directly at us like we should. Let's go back over here. Have to excuse the sirens in the background. See if we can hear our compressor now. Now you hear that? A lot smoother. Alright, now that the sirens have passed, like I was saying a second ago, you hear that compressor operation? Much, much smoother. So now that we have proper blower rotation, we're just waiting for our heat to kick on. Then we can burn the oil off that heat exchanger and we will be all set. Now, this is a good example of what my buddy Chris Stevens over at HVACR Videos always says, big picture diagnosis. So I was sent here to do one thing, which was just to simply bleed off the gas, or bleed the air out of the gas lines, turn the gas on, and then fire the units up. And in doing so, unit number 2 here, I found it had a trip breaker, and further investigation revealed that it has a shorted compressor. So it pays to be observant, guys, and to go that extra mile
You know, some guys might have maybe wrote that down and said, hey, we need a quote to come back to further diagnose. But in this particular situation, I was able to just diagnose it real quick while I'm on site, you know, making it much more convenient to my customer. Anyway, guys, that does it for now. I'm going to get back to doing what I was originally sent here to do, which is get this unit fired up in heat mode, burn off that heat exchanger, and I'm going to get out of here, all right? Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Leave me some feedback, some comments. Shoot me an email if you want. Follow me on Instagram or Facebook, whatever you want to do, all right? But for now, take care, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Looks like we got a no heat call to deal with today, guys. So this is a 13-ton Lennox unit here. Dual heat, variable speed motor, all that fun stuff. The complaint is, of course, it's not heating in part of the store. Now this unit and that other 13-ton unit right there are basically doing the same thing. That one, I have it narrowed down to a programming issue from the energy management company, so they're going to call me back and get that dealt with. However, this unit, though, has a couple of weird issues. I just got here a little bit ago to this unit and just opened it up. Now, if we look at our Prodigy board, our first alarm is S52, which is our blower pressure switch. Let's see, S52 is right here. So it's our airflow switch. And let me show you right where that's at. Let's walk over here. Open up our giant blower door. That blower switch right down there is S52. All right. Now, real quick, as you can tell, our belt's fine. It rotates. Just a minute ago, I put this through a blower test, which I'll just do again just to be sure, but I put it through a blower test without issue. So we might just have a faulty pressure switch. But let's keep on scrolling. Whoops, this one. S2, off on alarm 8 and 147. Alarm 8 I know is the blower switch issue. It's what they call strike 3 on the blower switch. Alarm 147 though, doesn't look like I have the book that I need for that. All right, hold on one second, guys. Let me go grab this book. All right. Now, luckily, I'm on a rooftop that has a couple of the same units, so when one unit is missing a book, if you're real lucky, you can just go to the unit over there and steal the book out of that unit. So let's see what it says here. Let's see. Troubleshooting is on page 37. Let's see, there is our alarm number 8, strike 3 on blower S52. So basically it's locked out saying, because it thinks that blower is not moving, which it might not be. We're going to do a quick blower test in a second here. Let's see what alarm 147 is. I'm not really used to alarm 147. It's way back here in the back of the book. All right. 147, outdoor air damper is apparently not modulating. Huh. Well, not sure when that happened because it's way too cold for the economizer to even be thinking about modulating at 30 degrees right now. So we'll reset that and see if it comes back. So let's keep on going, see if anything, no. Now let's go back to data, history, alarms. Let's see if there's any other alarms in here. Nope. Okay, well, I'm going to reset these alarms. Now, the alarm 8, I'm going to have to power it off and power it back on for it to actually clear. Hit save, and our alarms are now cleared. Now, I cleared the alarms because
once I start running the machine, I want to make sure if there is an alarm and it repeats, that it's not easily overlooked. So that's my logic behind doing that. So now let's go back into service mode, service, select, test, select. We're going to hit our blower. And you can see that jumping up. Over here, our contactor is pulled in. Quick side note, Mr. Chris Stevens pointed this out on his live stream that I almost learned this the hard way. Anytime you have a setup like this, you have your motor control right here, variable speed control, and you'll have the contactor that it basically controls, but then also up here you'll have a secondary contactor. This contactor is a bypass contactor, so during some PMs, what I and a few other guys probably like to do is just jam in the contactors with a screwdriver. If you were to jam this contactor in right now with this blower going, or if it's just in heat mode or whatever, if you were to jam that contactor in, you would blow up this variable speed control. Now, there's a sick part of my brain that wants to do that just to see what happens, but I don't want to pay for that, so we're not going to do that today. Maybe someday if I can sneak a rooftop unit off a roof into my house, into my garage, we'll try that. Anyway, let's get over here. Let's check and see if our blower is actually moving. It is. Let's see. I'm just going to bump it up to 100%. And we're at 58.8 hertz, it looks like. Now, you guys probably can't see that due to the shutter speed on my camera, but it was at 58.8 hertz. And we're still going. All right. Let's take this out of test mode. We'll just hit back, and see it's still off on alarm 8 and 147. So like I said, we'll have to cycle power before it'll actually clear those alarms. So click, 2, 3, 4, 5, click. And since it's cold in the store, it'll probably come back on in heat mode. And we're going to watch it to see what happens. And we're still watching it. And heat mode is coming on. Yeah, we got air blowing out of this one. Air blowing out of the other one. Should start sparking in a second. And then shortly after we ignite, our blower should come on. All right, we have ignition. We have ignition. And if you heard that, our sparking stopped, so that means our unit has verified that the flame has been lit, that it's across the burners, and pretty soon our blower should come on. Now another odd thing is right now it's saying we're in morning warm-up mode, which obviously is not correct. It's not the morning, so I'm not real sure what's up with that. We might have to go in there and check the time that this unit or this Prodigy board has. All right. Not sure if it's even showing up on camera, but we are at about 100% blower speed, 59 hertz right now. Discharge air temperature of 79 and climbing, 80, 81. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to let this run for a little while because it's cold in the store. I might do some light reading on that manual, see if I can't learn something. And then I think I'm going to pull that blower switch out, that little pressure switch. I'm going to pull it out, just make sure the orifices are clean, make sure there's nothing obstructing it. And then we'll just have to go from there until I can repeat the problem. I can't really solve the problem, I suppose. So I'll bring you guys back when I start pulling apart that blower switch, that pressure switch, all right? Let's check our time real quick, guys. So go to main menu. We'll go down to settings, select, general, date and time. So November 8th, 2019. I believe that's correct. Our time though, 17:09, that's 5:09 p.m. So let's adjust that. No. Whoopsie. So we want it at 15:09. There we go. All right. We're off on no demand, and we didn't get a single fault code. So I'm going to double check the time on this other unit while I wait for our energy management company to call us back. Now here is our S52 blower pressure switch. It's mounted right on the outside of our heat exchanger, supply, vent, discharge vent, whatever you want to call it. And it has this little nipple that is mounted right inside the cabinet right there. And when our blower kicks on, really all it does is it senses the pressure inside this heat exchanger supply vent. And with that pressure going down into the tube inside this switch, there's a rubber membrane inside this that will expand. I forget what it is, like a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch or something, and it'll close this switch. And that, of course, will tell our Prodigy board that the blower is indeed working and we can continue to do whatever it is we're doing. Now, just a quick note on this. These pressure switches have what I call is a bypass nozzle. I'm sure there's probably an actual technical term for it, but I just call it like a bypass nozzle, because what will happen is air pressure or just air from the blower will go into this tube and it'll fill up this rubber membrane, but it would probably, I don't know, expand or over pressurize the switch if it didn't have this blow through nozzle, this bypass nozzle that lets a little bit of air out. So that's what that does. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these wires off and blow into it and just verify that it does actually close. And then what I'll probably do is I'll probably just end up quoting to replace this, because it seems like maybe it's just having an intermittent issue. It's working fine now for some reason, but I don't know, whatever's causing it's intermittent. So I'm going to quote to replace that, and hopefully that'll solve their problems for the winter heating season. But in the meantime, I'm going to take this over to my meter and blow on it for a while. Well, guys, it's been about a week and a half or so since that last clip you watched. The quote I submitted for a new pressure switch was approved. Right here is our S52 pressure switch, part number, right there, 59W40. So we're going to install that, but first I want to check to see if this is tripped again on the S52 blower switch fault code. So we're going to go into data. Let me start over from the beginning here. So here's our main screen. Go to main menu, go to data, hit select, history, select, alarms, select. So it looks like we haven't had any alarms since, which is strange, because
this unit's been running the entire time I've been waiting for the quote to be approved, and we had apparently a faulty or intermittently failing pressure switch. So I was kind of expecting to have another fault code, but I guess that's not the case. So anyway, I'm going to swap out this pressure switch, and yeah, we'll go from there. I think what I might do, since this particular customer has a national account with Lennox, I can get to the top dogs in tech support. So I might call them and just pick their brain for a few minutes, see what they have to say about this entire situation. So, but I'll bring you along in just a few minutes, all right, guys? First things first, make sure your disconnect is off. Make sure you have no power. Now you can just check it with a meter. I'm more or less just concerned about that indoor blower motor kicking on while I have my face nearby it, because I don't want to get my beard yanked off by a giant blower wheel. There's our pressure switch. All right, tubes off there. Swap this out real quick, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tear this switch apart because I'm curious to know what's inside there. I think there's a rubber diaphragm inside of it, but I'm not 100% sure by any means. Let's see, how am I going to do this with one hand? Nope. So I just got off the phone with Lennox tech support, and real quick before I forget everything they told me, I wanted to kind of share it with you. So this pressure switch right here is the old one that I pulled out of there. Now that's probably, in all honesty, the second or third one that I've replaced. So I decided to call Lennox and see if there's a known ongoing issue with maybe the manufacturer of those pressure switches or whatnot. But apparently there isn't. Tech support said that it's more likely due to when the unit was installed, it wasn't commissioned properly, and when they did a building air balance test, if they even did one properly, what they should have done is balance the air and set the CFMs up properly so that even in this lowest mode, the CFM doesn't go down below the CFM doesn't go down to the point where the pressure switch isn't closing, if that makes sense. Because what we believe is going on, because again, that unit over there was doing the same thing, what we believe is going on is, since these two units are programmed to continuously circulate air, and when they get a call to circulate air, they're set up to circulate that air at the lowest setting. Because again, it's a VRF, so they're programmed to circulate air at the lowest setting. Now, at that lowest setting, there's a chance that the CFMs that is moving aren't enough to satisfy that pressure switch. This pressure switch needs to be satisfied in 16 seconds or it goes off on a code 5. And then in 5 minutes it resets itself and it tries again. And if the second time that switch isn't satisfied in 16 seconds, it goes into, again, a code 5, and then it does it one more time. And after the third time, it goes into a code 8, and it locks the machine out of doing anything. And then they call me, and I come up here, and I try to figure out what's going on. So aside from trying to balance the building and adjusting the CFMs and airflow and everything, and the multitudes of exhausts that they have on this roof, which I am neither trained or equipped to do that. The other thing the tech support guy told me is just check your belt tension, check the motor pulley, make sure it's make sure the belt's not loose, make sure the motor pulley isn't opened up all the way. Now, I'm not a big proponent of just adjusting motor pulleys all willy-nilly, because again, you do mess with the airflow balance. But I am going to look at the motor pulley in just a second here. So let's make sure we're off before we do that, because again, safety first. All right. So we got this nice tension arm on here. The belt was just replaced. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of tension on. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of
deflection on that belt. It's pretty tight. Motor pulley, it's not opened up all the way. Tech support said if this motor pulley is opened up all the way, in combination of the building possibly not being balanced, that could lead to low CFMs and an unsatisfied pressure switch. Alright guys, here's a look at our pressure switch. Now it didn't want to come apart, but I wanted it to come apart, and it looks like I won. So, I've never had one of these apart before, but looks like it's just a rubber membrane in there that moves up and down. I want to see what kind of contacts they have underneath this thing. So that's our little pressure dome. Our contacts are in there, huh? Let me get two hands on this real quick, guys. There we go. Just took a little bit more coercing. So, this part is that part right there. Sits right inside that switch. We can flip this over. So it'll sit just like that. And this little, whatever you call it, diaphragm would sit inside like that, and as the air pressure was going down through the supply duct, it would actually suck in, close like so. You can hear it clicking, and then obviously when there's no air pressure, it's just going to back off, and the spring that's inside this little switch right down there is going to force this plunger back up. See if I can get this to focus here. Just the tiniest little contacts in there, but it looks like it's okay. I don't see a real issue with this switch, so I think if anything they probably just have, like tech support was saying, they probably just have an air balance issue, and this unit maybe wasn't set up properly in the beginning, wasn't commissioned properly to handle or to satisfy this pressure switch with the lowest setting of CFMs. But I am not an airflow expert, an airflow technician. I do not balance buildings. I do not do any of that. So even going this far into theorizing what I believe happened is a little bit outside of my realm. But hey, I'm a curious guy. And sometimes when you're curious about stuff, you got to smash it, take it apart, and then form theories and ideas of what happened. So, anyways, guys, we are back up and running here. I'm all set for today. I'm going to get out of here because it's cold out and it looks like it might rain. So, take it easy, guys. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button for me, and I will see you on the next one, all right? I think this is what I'm supposed to be working on. My work order says aisle 9. I'm currently in aisle 10. But they did say wire or shelving cutter. So I believe I'm supposed to fix a pneumatic wire cutter here. Alright, I don't have the code to actually turn this safety disconnect or whatever you call it on. Alright, follow me, guys. So right up there, that connector right there, one side of that goes down behind the shelving. Let's see, you can see the cord right there. Goes down, 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 and it powers that electrical box. So that electrical box that you're looking at comes over here, and it powers this coded, what I call it, just a coded disconnect. Let's look back up there again. Now, if you'll notice, the other side of that Molex plug isn't connected to anything. So obviously there won't be any electricity if it's not connected to anything. There should be something hanging in there that would normally connect to it. Like right there. As I'm walking around, I'm looking at their lighting, and it looks like they have all new fancy LED lights installed. And about a month ago I ran into a similar issue where they had some upgrades made, and a couple of the aisles didn't have electricity. So if I had to guess, I would say that whoever installed these LED lights probably came through and removed power from that. Or they removed the line, or they somehow used it to power up some of these LED lights. So now we have to figure out how we can reconnect power to that. Hey, what's up, YouTube? So we are back on location. It's been about 2 weeks since that last clip you saw. I just got word that my lift has been delivered inside the garden center, so I'm going to run inside there, block off a couple aisleways, drive the lift around until I hit aisle number 10, and then we're going to figure out exactly where up in the ceiling I can steal power or tap into some power, and we'll run it over to that pneumatic cutting device. All right, so all right, there's the power we're going to be stealing. I found a line that seemingly went to nowhere. It's actually the line that was connected to that, which just dangles down in between the aisle, and it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to steal it and route it over to the machine that does do something. Or try to anyway. So here's what I did. I stole power from the line that fed basically a bank of empty outlets that is built in behind a display. So I stole power from something that doesn't need power anymore. Just hooked it up to here, so we now have power to our pneumatic device down there. I'm going to secure all this wiring, and then we'll wrap it up. I think it'll work now. All right, guys, we are all wrapped up here. I'm going to go ahead and start making my way out of this place. Just got my lift put back, called off. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video. A little bit different than what you're used to. I know I do a majority of heating and cooling, so I figure I'd throw this one in there and give you something different to stare at, you know? So, hope you like it. I'll see you on the next one, guys. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for me, all right?
Hey guys, so here's our project for today. I got this 6-ton train unit, and I'm just here doing a preventative maintenance. However, when I came up here to change the filters on it, I noticed that our inducer motor is making a lot of racket. It's still blowing air, but it's, as I'm sure you can hear, it's very, very loud. Now, when we come over here to our ignition module, and we see it's flashing 3 times. Come down here to our failure code. So our pressure switch has failed, or something along the lines of a pressure switch issue. Could even be related to this inducer motor. Like I said, it is blowing air. If I had to guess, it feels like it's blowing air about 80% of a normal, fully operational inducer motor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to power it down, pull that panel off, and inspect the inducer motor, see if maybe that pressure switch is blocked up by anything, see if there's maybe something inside that inducer motor that's causing that racket. Chances are it's just going bad, because that's what they do. So let me set the camera down, guys. I'll bring you back in just a second. Here we are, guys. There's our inducer motor. It looks old, sort of rusted out. The main issue, though, that I immediately noticed is our tube going to our pressure switch is just kind of dangling down here. Not sure how or why that's happened. I've honestly never seen that happen before. I've seen them where the end will crack and kind of split off and then they'll fall off, but the port right there, if we can get some eyes on this port right back there, if you can see it very well, but that doesn't appear to be the case. It doesn't look like this rubber hose is really that bad a condition, so I'm going to jam it back on there, turn this thing back on, and see if we fire up. I'm probably still going to quote to replace this inducer motor. I'm going to pull it off real quick and just check on the inside, but if it's still making that noise and I don't dig anything out of it, I'm just going to quote to replace it, because I don't want to be running with a bad inducer motor and then just one day that inducer motor fails, and you know, obviously they're gonna call me a hack because I have to come back out here a couple days after I do a preventative maintenance. So it's much better this way. Not sure how well you guys can see inside there, but there doesn't seem to be any obstructions in this inducer wheel. Check the little fan down inside there. Doesn't seem to be any obstructions in the little cooling fan on the end of this inducer motor, so yeah, I think we'll just end up quoting to replace it. I see nothing inside of there. Double check that heat exchanger before I just go quoting just the inducer. So I never want to replace an inducer, come back, and then find out that the heat exchanger or something major is cracked. So remember, look at the big picture, guys. I got my inducer reassembled, turned it back on. I'm sure you can hear that it still sounds like garbage, but at least we'll be able to see if everything else fires up. Yeah, we do have ignition. So it does work, but we do need to replace that inducer ASAP. So I'm going to submit a quote for that today. But before I do that, I'm going to pull the panel off the back side of this and just inspect that heat exchanger. This unit doesn't seem to be old enough that it would have a crack in the heat exchanger, but you never know. So let's get that taken care of real quick. Well, guys, our heat exchanger is in actually much worse condition than I thought. See if I can show you what I'm talking about here. So right there, We got a bunch of cracks right along there. Right over here on the side, right there, we got a nice big old crack going around the edge of that tube. And then right down here, you can see there's another ginormous crack. See if I can show you without dropping my phone into the vent. So those 3 cracks right there are going to make me shut this unit down. Turn the gas off, and then the other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this panel back open. I'm going to pull the W1, W2 wires off, just to make absolutely sure there's no way this thing could even attempt to go on in heat mode. And then we'll just have to get a hold of the facility manager and let them know what it needs and see how they want to proceed. So hopefully there's a part 2 to this, because it looks like next week there's going to be a cold spell, and they're going to want some heat in this store, I'm assuming anyway. So, alright guys, well that'll wrap it up for today. I'm going to submit a quote, and hopefully we'll be back here within a week and get this thing replaced, alright? Until then guys, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Hey, what's up guys? Doing something a little bit different today. I'm going to take you along a rooftop unit quote that I'm doing. And the only reason I'm going to take you along for the ride is because it's sort of an elaborate setup. And I really want to know if any of you guys have dealt with a similar situation. And if you did, how did you deal with it? What was your quote? How did you handle it? Did you do it? Was it too much? Let me know. Give me some comments down below. Let me know if you guys have encountered anything like this. So I'm sure this isn't the craziest thing anybody's ever seen, but it's sort of elaborate, so I'm sure somebody out there can get a little bit of entertainment value out of it. And at the very least, if you guys share your stories, I'll get to learn a little bit as well, all right? So let me turn this camera around and show you what I'm dealing with today. All right, let's go. Alright, so the first part of our adventure is we have to go up this ladder. Walk over here. Careful, there's snow down there. Then we're gonna jump down. Alright. Now you'll notice roof hatch there, and you're thinking, why didn't I just use the roof hatch? Well, apparently it doesn't work. The ladder's been removed, and that's no longer an option. Now, I know you're probably thinking, which one of these units are we quoting? Well, it's not one of these units. You look way up there, you see that ladder poking out over there? That's what we have to get to. Alright, so let's shimmy over here. It's a good thing I did my stretches this morning. Once I get over there, it's going to be a little
a little bit different. Right. That unit right there, my friends, that is the unit we need to replace. Now, I know it's nothing too crazy. We would just have to, guide the crane in blind, which isn't unheard of, right? Let me slowly shimmy over this way. So, there's our unit. And right over there, just beyond where that car is parked, that's about the only place we have to set up a crane. And given the reach, we would have to get a very, very large crane. That would probably be the size of that entire road over there. Once they get the jibs all set up and everything extended out, you're looking at probably the width of a 2-lane highway. So we'd have to set that thing out there pretty far. I'm guessing from there to there, 100, 120 feet at maybe. I'm not real good at eyeballing distances like this, but that's what we're looking at. Because obviously we can't safely set a crane on the grass. Over there isn't an option because it's all wet lawn and trees. And over there, again, also not an option. Alright guys, so I know it's not the craziest setup anybody's ever seen, but it's a little bit different in my world, so I figure I'd share it with you guys and bring you along for a little bit of a day in my life, alright? So, anyway guys, thanks for watching. Also, don't forget, like and subscribe while you're at it, alright? We'll see you on the next one. Alright guys, 7:58 and we are about to hit the road. Just dropped the little one off at school. Coffee's ready. Rubik's Cube is solved. So let's get a move on. Riding down the rural back roads of Michigan, guys. So I'm heading into Ohio today, and we're going to be doing some work for a Hvac Sun. They have one single lonely rooftop unit, and my guys were there about 3-4 weeks ago replacing a compressor in this old train unit. I want to say it's maybe 13 years old. I could be wrong. I don't really remember all the specifics because I wasn't there. But they replaced the compressor on it, and shortly after the compressor was replaced, they found a leak in the condensing coil. I'm not real sure how that worked because I know there was recovery done on the initial compressor changeout, so I'm not sure if this is just a little tiny leak and there was still a little bit of refrigerant to recover. I don't know all those details, but the condensing coil does need to be replaced. I quoted them a brand new rooftop unit just because of the age. The heat exchanger on this thing looks okay. It's not the best. They'll probably get another season or two out of it if they're lucky, but they didn't want to replace the unit, so instead we are going to be replacing the condensing coil on it. Now it's nothing too crazy. However, it's about, I want to say 28-30 degrees out today. No, looks like we're in Sylvania, so we are in Ohio now. Anyway, it's about 28-30 degrees outside here today, so charging the unit's going to be a little bit tricky. Now it's at a mall, and in a situation like this where I have to charge an outside rooftop unit or condensing coil or whatever, whenever I'm doing any charging outside, when, if at all possible, I like to take my refrigerant tank and I'll just set it in some hot water at the beginning of the job, and by the time I actually need that refrigerant, there should be enough pressure built up in the system or built up in the tank that I can just take it up on the roof and charge it without any sort of issue. But I don't really have that option at this location, so I might end up using a charging jacket or something. I'm not real sure. We'll have to get we'll have to do some in the field engineering. We'll have to get creative with this situation.
what I always could do is just take my recovery machine and just sort of hook it up backwards, so I'm pulling refrigerant out of the refrigerant tank and forcing it into the rooftop unit. That's an option as well, but I don't like to do that too much, just because in my opinion, I feel if I'm running, and I could put a dryer in line, but in my opinion, I feel like if I'm running refrigerant through that recovery machine, I run the risk of possibly contaminating the refrigerant. But again, if I run it through a dryer, I could probably negate that risk, but we'll see. We'll have to get on site and play it by ear, but I'll bring you guys back along for the ride, show you some highlights and all the fun stuff going on. I just seen some snowflakes here, so, and by snowflakes I mean actual snowflakes, frozen precipitation falling from the sky, not the other sort of snowflake, because this is Ohio and I don't want to offend any Ohioans. So, alrighty guys, let me cut you loose. I'll bring you back in just a little bit. Look at the size of that. I have to upgrade my pump one of these days. Maybe I'll get the MR45 though. I wonder if that's any good. There's our new condensing coil, guys. I had to uncrate it to wedge it in here, but it should be safe. I don't see it falling over. I got everything strapped down around it, so. Here's our next stop, guys. Young Supply, because I need some air filters. Because while we're here changing out this condensing coil, I'm going to replace the filters and also do some preventative maintenance for another customer at this same location. Oh look, they got a Christmas tree. Alright, so here's my new toy I picked up. CPS heater strap for refrigerant cylinders. So we're going to test this thing out today, see how it works. Like I said, it's not too terribly cold out, 30 degrees, which is like a fall day, for me anyway. 115 volts. It's got automatic shut off at 130 degrees. So, let's see. I've never used one of these before, so hopefully it works great. Let's get it done. Look at this guy. Parked right next to a no parking sign. Anyway, I don't really care about that. So that's where we're going. Right up there. Might be kind of hard to tell, but there's a false wall up there. And right behind that false wall is our unit. So I'm hoping mall security is going to let me set a ladder up next to the building, at least to get all my equipment up there. Because if not, I have to go way across to the other side of the mall, load everything up, get up the stairs to the roof access, and then walk all the way across the mall to this side of the building, which is just ridiculous. I mean, I'm looking at probably an hour just to get all my equipment up there if I have to go that route. So fingers crossed that mall security is going to be nice to me today. Just got up here on the roof of the mall. There's my roof access. And we're about to make this journey across the rooftop here. I had to go back through security and get something handled real quick. So I got my cart halfway to our destination here. I'm going to flip this camera around and show you exactly what we're dealing with here. Now, this is one of those situations where it almost would be better to be a residential tech today because it's really, really cold out. I have to walk all the way. If you see that opening right there, straight ahead, I have to walk all the way over there, around that corner, and then further over to the side of the roof to get to the unit that I'm working on.
So, a little bit of walking. Gonna get my steps in today, about 15,000 steps. So, let's get after it, guys. Look at that. I could just do a Mission Impossible right now. Cut this skylight open, grab me some jewelry, and climb back up on the roof, huh? No, I wouldn't do that. I'm way too out of shape to be climbing down ropes and all that fun junk. So yeah, still walking. Still walking. Here's my cart that I left abandoned a little bit ago. Now getting over these gas lines won't be too terrible, but when I get to that upper level, that's all rocks. So I'm not sure how well this cart is gonna handle on rocks. So that'll be exciting. All right, there's a condensing coil we're changing out, if all goes well. Little 10-ton unit. I think it's probably about 12, 13 years old-ish. There's our old condenser, guys. Doesn't look too bad, but we had a leak right in behind this elbow. So there really wasn't much we could do besides replace it. In a pinch, I've seen guys where they'll just cut off the circuit, cut this in half, braze it shut, and you can try to isolate that circuit. But it wasn't really an emergency. So we went with the more of a permanent fix. There's our new coil, nice and shiny and clean. We're just gonna get her brazed in place here and do a pressure check here in a few minutes. I'll tell you guys, there's something demeaning about getting yelled at by a mall cop. No offense to mall cops. I'm sure there's a bunch of cool mall cops out there, but today me and mall cops just don't seem to be seeing eye to eye. So it started off that they wouldn't give me permission to set a ladder up next to the building and rope all my equipment up and condensing coil and all that stuff up in a timely manner. So I had to do the long walk of shame across the rooftop. And then when I went to drop that old condensing coil down, and I wouldn't even say drop it down, me and my partner here, we just lowered it down with a rope, and we lowered it right down into a bush. Away from doors, away from sidewalks, just right down into a bush. However, there was a mall security guard that watched us do that, and they came racing over, jumped out of the truck, and yelled at us for doing that, saying we could have hit somebody, even though this side of the roof is like 12 foot tall. And unless people are walking through a wall and into the bush, probably not going to hit anybody. So anyway, I'm driving around to the side right now to pick it up and get it out of that bush, make sure nobody else gets hurt. But just wanted to rant on that for a little bit. Alright guys, there's the coil that we dropped down. So you can tell it's not really that far away, maybe 15, 20 feet. I know I said 12 foot earlier. It's not too crazy. There's my filters. There goes the security personnel. There's the door that only certain people can come out of. So it's not really that dangerous, but I guess rules are there to protect the dumb sometimes. Let's see what we got going on. All right, as you can tell, condensing coil's been brazed in. Filter dryer was changed. We're down to about 900 microns. The other thing I wanted to show you guys, this fancy charging jacket over here. Let's see, I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but it's roughly 117. Now I did have it inside that bucket just to keep the wind off of it, kind of insulated a little bit, and I was up to 132 degrees. So it's not a bad little device. The only issue I have with it is it really only goes, I don't know, roughly 3/4 of the way around the tank, and it really only goes in the middle. So, I mean, it's gonna warm the middle part up, and yeah, eventually, you know, the heat's gonna transfer inside the tank to the refrigerant on top and bottom and all that stuff, and eventually it's gonna warm up.
But if you are in a situation where you need a charging jacket like this, like I'm in, chances are you're outside and you're gonna need probably the entire tank to be covered. So I almost think I'd be better off just taking an electric blanket, plugging in an electric blanket, wrapping that entire tank in an electric blanket, and setting it inside of a box or a bucket, whatever I can stuff it into, and just letting it warm up for a while. And chances are an electric blanket would be much cheaper than that. So that's just my 2 cents. Real quick, guys, I want to talk about something that I've been mulling over in my head. So once we do get the refrigerant inside this unit, I'm going to have a hard time properly commissioning this system. And by properly commissioning the system, I mean letting it run, checking my pressures, superheat, subcooling, all that fun stuff, because it's so cold outside. Now, if there are any ambient lockouts, I can bypass those, not a problem. My low pressure switches, without cutting the wires, I can't really bypass those, but I brought this cardboard up here so I can block off the condenser and drive up pressures. Now, that's not a big deal, but the problem is if I do that, I won't really know what the ambient temperature would be. Because at that point I'm blocking off the condenser, so my ambient temperature, my rule of thumb, 30 degrees above ambient, is kind of out the window at that point. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is scheduling us to come back out here on a much warmer day when we're above 50 degrees, maybe in the 60s, probably after the winter time, and we'll probably have to recommission the system when it's nice and warm out and we can check everything in its natural running conditions. So, hey guys, just a quick recap of that last job we did there. Condensing coil install went smooth, no issues, no further leaks. However, when we went to power it back on, we found out that we had no power going to the disconnect. So I went down to the actual retail location, looked in the breaker panel, and could not find a single breaker for that unit or the unit next to it. So the manager of the location didn't know anything about hidden sub panels or anything. So we essentially left the unit with no power because we need to get a hold of the mall maintenance or the mall engineer and see exactly where those units get their power from. And then we'll just have to come back and recommission this system. But nothing too crazy going on. Kind of a neat one today. A little bit of walking, but that's all right. It won't kill me to burn some calories, you know. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for me. And yeah, if you have any follow-up questions or ideas, opinions, shoot me an email. CuriousHVACguy@gmail.com. All right? And we'll see you on the next one. All right. Bun toaster. Those are really, really loose. Really loose on that side. Complaint is our belts aren't rotating. So, there's our schematic. Don't believe this has ever been plugged in anything. Right here, this chain is of course supposed to be on this pulley. So if you look right over there, down inside there, our chain has come off both of our sprockets. Feel down there, it looks like our chain is still attached to our drive sprocket, but we're gonna have to drop that motor down a little ways.
right there. If I loosen these screws around the base of this motor, I can lower it down and get some tension on that chain. Alright, so I loosened that motor up, I raised it up, I got my chain back on my sprockets. I'm just kind of going through checking the wiring. See right here, this wiring used to go to a safety switch right there. So I'm going to re-quote a new safety switch. See, it would go right here. And this would sit on here. And without this sitting on there to protect people from getting burned, it wouldn't turn on. So I'm going to quote a new safety switch. And pop open this other side over there and just kind of double check those bearings, I think. Alright, here's our other side.
I'm thinking number 1 with the diet. And
Not sure why these bolts are out, but nobody put these bolts back. Looks like maybe it's stripped out of our heating plate right there. Bearings look okay though. I'm not real concerned about that. Tighten that little screw up. Put this bolt back in there. Yeah, nothing much to see on this side. Real quick, guys, on these bun toasters, these little screws here and here, they go to these little bars that help support the covers for these belts. Whenever you have these panels open, just tighten them down. They get loose all the time. No display. Hey, what's up, guys? So we are on the roof of a mall in Jackson, Michigan today. And as is with every mall, most of this stuff isn't labeled, so for the next little while I'm gonna just walk around trying to find out which rooftop unit I'm supposed to be working on based on the geography of the mall. They got some funky looking stuff up here. Some old units, some new units, some stuff I've never seen before. Some of the old turquoise blue units. Those are pretty cool. But, alright guys, it's cold, so enough chit-chatting. That's not labeled. It's probably not ours though. Vitamin World. The place is still around. Buckles. What the hell is a buckle?
Alright guys, here is our unit. It's actually not as old as I thought. And it's also a Daikin, which I rarely ever see. So this ought to be interesting. I can hear our indoor blower going. Nothing coming out of the inducer. My first assumption is we're probably off on some sort of thermal overload or something. That's why our blower's going nonstop. But let's pull some panels apart and see what's going on. Now right here, guys, this is why I don't come up to a unit that's not working and shut the disconnect off before I open this control panel. I know that's the safest way to do it, but what happens sometimes is you'll reset this board and you might not get that fault code back. So we got 2 flashes. Let's see what Daikin says 2 flashes means. Dun, dun, dun. Pressure switch open. All right. Let's come over here. We'll open up our heat access and see what's going on with that pressure switch. Well, guys, it started to get really, really cold. So I was trying to find a unit that was running in heat mode so I could, you know, warm my hands up real quick. And I came around here. I found this magnificent beauty. Look at that, just sucking in outside air. I'm guessing whoever put those filters in didn't properly secure this panel. I'll come back over here, put a screw in there. So anyway, I don't see none of these units running in heat mode. It's 20, 25 degrees out here. Not a single unit looks like it's heating. There we go. I found a couple units that were heating up, so warm my hands up real quick. Now, don't be stupid, guys. I know this is flue gas. Don't stand over here and take a deep breath. But if you don't have the opportunity to go downstairs, since I'm at a mall and the rooftop entranceway is, you know, halfway across the mall, run over here real quick, warm my hands up, get back to work, all right? That's all I'm gonna do. Oh, this one's hot too. Feels like I'm in a sauna now. A sauna. All right, we're warm. Let's get this finished. Well, guys, took me about 15 minutes to wrestle these panels off, because apparently Daikin doesn't want you to be able to take these panels off with ease. So anyway, got the panels off, and I immediately noticed this little wire right here was all burned up. Now that wire goes right into our inducer motor, so I'm going to trim it back, wire nut it together, and see if we can't get that to come on and close our pressure switch. All right, we got a wire nutted together. Now, the other wire that goes to this inducer motor is a male-female connection. The reason I didn't do that, or the reason I didn't put a male-female connection back in there, is simply because inside that connection, it looked kind of deteriorated, like it had gotten moisture inside of it, so I figured it would be safer and just easier with a wire nut. So the other thing that I'm going to do is just go around and double check all these wires, since this is a newer unit. Belt's nice and tight. I'm just going to double check all my connections. Sometimes on these newer units, you just get some wires that are not pushed on all the way. And poor connections equal heat, and heat will burn up spade connectors, wires, contactors, whatever it's connected to, it'll burn it up. Or it could burn it up. Huh.
I don't see anything else out of place. Nothing else looks alarming, so let's put this cover back on, this blower door panel, and fire it up, see what happens. We got power back on. Fault code is gone. And we just ignited. Alright, let's let that run a little bit, then we'll get a supply temp right over there. And we're gonna get out of here because it is freezing. Even though the sun's out, it's still freezing. Here in the Arctic Circle of Michigan. Alright guys, I'm all wrapped up here. My face is frozen. We got lucky today though. Real easy fix. And there ain't nothing better than an easy fix on a day like today when it's negative 72 degrees outside here in Michigan. So I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, alright guys? Thanks for hanging out with me today. Really do appreciate it. I'll see you on the next one, alright? Go ahead and like and subscribe. Hey, what's up YouTube? So it is Wednesday morning. It's about 9 o'clock. It's 11 degrees outside, and we're heading down to Ohio to fix a liquid header on a rooftop package unit. But for now guys, stick around. I'll see you on the job site. Cue the music. Here's our liquid header we're going to be replacing. Now, I originally thought that there was a panel I could remove right here and kind of get access, but what I'm going to end up doing is removing this condensing fan and then just climbing down inside there. You guys hear that? Sounds like a Kawasaki, doesn't it? Well, when I was here originally to diagnose this unit, I found there's an air gap underneath this curb, and it's causing that noise because it wasn't sealed properly. All right, stop here. So I had some audio issues, so the next few seconds of this footage will be kind of weird because I'm gonna have to do a little bit of voiceover, so just a fair warning for you. Here I am inside the condensing unit. I'm talking about stuff with my face. There's me pointing at the liquid header that we're about to replace. There's me again pointing at the liquid header we're about to replace. And here is me with my favorite little tiny tubing cutter. I'm probably describing how to use a tubing cutter, how you spin it around, all that fun stuff. Four more to go. All right. And there's part of our liquid header. Now we just have to go through it, unbraze all 6 of these little stubbies.
So as I was unbrazing that stubby right there, it started pouring oil out of it. So I had to stop brazing, of course. I'm guessing that's the main orifice that was plugged up. Now I expected that bottom one to be the toughest one, but it was this one, the very last one on top. As you can tell, the copper stub sort of just broke off as I was trying to unbrace it and pull it out of there. I'm not real sure, but it broke right off, so now I have to try to figure out a way to get that little piece of copper out of there so I can braze in the new header. This is one of the pistons out of the old piston header assembly. You can kind of see that piston right down in there. Let me give you a better look. See right there? That inside there is our piston. Now this one is the one that broke off and all the oil leaked out, and this is the one that I assumed was plugged up just because of the oil problem. If we look down inside there, it looks plugged up. So let's get her on the light here. Yeah, there's no light shining through that whatsoever. So out of 6, we had 1 plugged up. I'm not sure how well you guys can see down inside that stubby piece of copper, but what you're looking at is the piston, and it doesn't look like it's plugged up. It looks like it was actually never machined properly. There's not a hole there whatsoever. Now on the back side, there seems to be a little bit of a hole. Our new header's brazed in. For being such a tight spot, it actually wasn't too terrible. Just gotta go slow and be mindful. My biggest concern was the flame hitting some of these other tubes. Just got the system pressurized and I found a leak in my factory-made liquid header right over here. Right there. Right from the factory. So that's special. Alright, let me see if I can braze that shut now. Alright guys, time for a real-time check-in. So on that last clip you saw on the left-hand side of my liquid header, we had a leak from the factory, of course. And I repaired that leak, and I went to pressure test it again, and then I found a leak on the other side. So I'm assuming it just wasn't brazed properly from the factory. Anyway, fixed that one, pressure tested it. We held at about 175 psi. And then after that, another fun thing happened. My CPS micron gauge quit working. Not sure if it's just too cold out for it or what, but I had some issues with that, so I had to bust out my backup Subco micron gauge, so I got that on there right now. We're down to about 1,500 microns. Gonna let this run a little while longer. Shouldn't be an issue getting down to 500, and then we'll charge it up, and I'm gonna get out of here because I've been out in the cold all day long. Alright, stay tuned. Hey, what's up guys? So, we're all done with that call. I'm heading home right now. As you probably guessed, I wasn't able to actually turn the AC on in that unit because it was about 15 degrees out by the time I left, so we'll have to wait till summertime or when it warms up sometime in the spring maybe, and we'll get a better idea if that unit runs. It does run in heat mode, I know that, but running an AC just isn't in the cards today. So anyway, guys, hope you liked the video. Hope you learned a little bit of something. Hope it entertained you for a wee little bit. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one, all right? Hey, what's up, guys? So today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm on site here. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning or so, and I am on site at a fast food restaurant. And what we're doing today is replacing a filter pump on a Henny Penny Evolution fryer. It's a little bit different than what I normally show you, so I'm going to try to get as much on film as I can and let you guys see how awesome and fun and gross it is to change out filter pumps on fryers. All right, so stick around, guys. I'll see you inside. All right, guys, so what we're doing today is we're going to be replacing this fryer pump motor. So my first thing is, I have it powered down, of course. What I'm going to do is disconnect this fitting, and then right back there, way in the back, I need to disconnect that fitting. Then I think we can take this entire assembly and drop it right down below and pull it out the front. So right here, we're going to remove this control box that hides the ignition modules for this unit. And once we get these bolts off, we can move this box out of the way and gain access to the fitting at the back side of this pump. Without removing this box, you can't really take that fitting apart very easily. See, guys, these fryer pumps, changing out these fryer pumps, working on these fryers. That's why I wear long sleeves. That nut right there is what we need to get to. Now, most of the time, this box sort of sticks a little bit due to grease buildup on the threads, a little bit of grease buildup on the back side of this box. So you got to wiggle it, pry it loose a little bit, but eventually it comes loose. There we go. And now we're free enough to reach this fitting back here. Alright, so our pump is almost out. Just got to disconnect our electrical, and then we'll be able to drop it down.
Now right here I'm removing the cotter pins that are holding 2 of the mounting pins that go through the bottom of this filter pump motor mount. However, I did do this out of sequence. What I should have done first was remove that other control box that is directly above these motor mount pins. And then I should have unwired the motor before removing the motor mount brackets and pins and attempting to drop that motor. As you'll see, it didn't really work out well doing it the way that I did it in this video. Alright, so to get to the wiring, I had to move this so I can unwire it. So hindsight being 20/20, next time before I pull those pins out, I'm going to unwire it because it's harder to do when it's flopping around like it is. Alright guys, we got this old one out. I'm going to unbolt it, slap the new one on the mount, put these fittings back in to the new one, and then we'll get her back in place here. A quick warning guys, these fittings that I'm removing, sometimes they don't want to come out. Sometimes you'll have to heat the pump up with your torch to get them out. Sometimes they get destroyed in the process of getting them out. So if at all possible, I try to keep either some of these fittings on hand or I'll order them along with a new motor. They're maybe $15 to $20 a piece, so it doesn't hurt to have them on hand in case you can't get them out. You don't leave the customer without a pump. So much grease on here. There we go. And that, guys, is the reason to wear gloves when you're doing this, or really any fryer work. Always wear gloves. The reason I put plumber's tape on these is to keep grease off of the threads, so when I come back to replace this again, because this motor will go bad, these fittings will be a little easier to get out. That's why. Alright, so we have our oil fittings back on there. Now let's reinstall it. These cotter pins don't want to go in. There we go. Now, as I'm wiring this back up, let me just remind you, when you quote a job like this, also include a little bit of time to clean up after yourself. For example, it took me maybe 15, 20, 25 minutes or whatever to clean all my tools of all the grease and everything when I was done. So I'll include that as part of the job, obviously. I'll bring in some of the grate wipes and I'll clean everything up. I'll wipe the fryer down, wipe all my tools down, get everything back the way it was before I got there. Alright guys, here's our old motor right over here. Got our brand new motor installed, wired up. We're going to heat this thing up and see if it actually works now. Alright guys, so when this motor failed, what I did is I changed one of the settings that automatically filters this. I changed it to 85 loads, so we're going to change that back. for filter after. Right here, filter after, 85 loads. I'm going to just adjust that down until we get to 20. There we go. Let's make sure it's saved. There we go. Good. Good. Pretty easy. Alright guys, quick recap here. I just had to pull across the street and get some gas, so I figured I'd take a second and recap everything with you. So, I hope you enjoy that video. As you could tell, anytime you do one of those filter pumps, always wear black gloves, because there is grease in places grease should never be. And if you don't wear black gloves, you're going to have grease in places you probably don't want it to be. And in case you didn't catch it on film there, that's the reason why I wear long sleeves all the time. I used to do a lot of fryers a long time ago. And one day I decided I was just tired of getting grease in my arm hair and all over myself. So I just started wearing long sleeve shirts, and I guess I never went back. So just a tip there, if you guys do have to do one of these filter pumps, maybe throw on an old shirt, just something, because they are messy. You're just gonna lay in grease, you're gonna be touching grease. It's just super gross. All right guys, well I'm gonna wrap this up and get out of here. I hope you enjoyed that video. Go ahead and like and subscribe for me, and I will see you on the next one, all right? Hey, what's up guys? So today is New Year's Eve, and I'm out running just a few calls. Nothing too crazy. But I'm about to show you a little video of me changing out some filters. And it's nothing too crazy, but it's a little bit of a situation where I thought, you know, maybe I could share this little tip and benefit some of the newer guys out there. Just a simple little tip an old guy showed me one time, and I've been using it ever since. So stick around, take a look at the video, and I hope you get something out of it, all right? So here's our little tiny issue. We're going to be replacing these filters, but the problem is those filters go back there a good 4 or 5 feet beyond my reach. So, not a lot we can do, but so my fix is I took a little dowel rod and I put a little hook on it. Just hook it in there, pull them out, hook them in there, pull them out. Let's get back there. Hook them in there, pull them out. Works pretty good, right? Now let me show you what to do to make it easier for the next guy. Alright guys, so what I'm about to show you isn't something that I thought of. It's not original to me. It was taught to me by an old guy, and I'm sure there's lots of people that know this trick. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape these filters together in sort of an accordion style, accordion pattern. And when you do that, you want to make sure your airflow is mismatched like this, so that when you tape them together and then you unfold them, that they all are going the right direction. And you also want to make sure you tape the correct sides so that they do fit into the filter rack the way they're supposed to. So let me set this camera down and I will show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to use foil tape because it's cold out and the clear packing tape didn't want to stick very well, so I'm going to try this.
notice I taped these two, so now they're still separate, of course. All we do is flip it around, and then we're going to tape together these middle two. Okay. So now when we install it, they're going to be connected. So let's go up to the roof and I'll show you exactly what I mean by saving the next guy some time when he goes to pull these out. Alright guys, here's our filters. Simple, right? See, and that, guys, is how you're going to save the next guy a lot more time and headache. Now, I know they make filter grabbers, and you can just make one of these homemade dowel rod filter grabbers like I had. But if you get up on the roof, or if you're, say, at a mall, and you've walked 3 miles across the mall rooftop without a filter grabber, you're really going to be thanking the previous guy who changed those filters and taped them together. It's not something you have to do, but that's your tip of the day, guys, all right? Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one, all right? Don't forget to like and subscribe while you're at it.